Yes, welcome back to Dyl Friends, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, before we get into it, a massively full credit to the team at Dove Men+Care for showing care as sponsors of this podcast. Our Dove Men+Care hotline is actually
closed.
It's closed. This is sadly the last episode.
I know.
Of
what
the
a
series.
journey.
Hey, what have we learnt? So much. It's been unbelievable, and we cannot thank Dove Men+Care enough for this. After this one, we will have given away a total of
$35,000.
$35,000.
Wow.
35,000 big ones.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy, and we cannot thank Dove Men+Care enough for this opportunity to do this. It's actually been life-changing for a lot of people. Everyone that's received this money, and to have the platform to be able to do it, it's why we get up in the morning and we go, let's get to work.
Bloody oath.
Bloody awesome. So massive thank you, to Dove Men+Care for everything they've done. And guess what, Darcy and Mon? This is our last one.
Wow.
This week's winner is Max Jones.
Max Jones. And before we play the message,
Yes.
this was actually the first entry. So this is the first one I listened to, the first one the Dove team listened to, and I thought, we're going to save this.
Special.
Because it's a nice way to wrap up the series. So let's have a listen.
Hello, Dyl Friends crew. I'm Dyl, Darcy and Sam. This is my application for the full credit to the boys moment by Dove. I guess the person I want to nominate, or the figure I want to nominate is quite important to me. It has been really important to me over the last 4 years, this person, this figure. It's someone I want to nominate for, I guess, the role they've provided me since leaving school. It's a challenging time navigating that period between moving out of school and moving into university, but not really knowing the correct path or which way to go, and not really having any rules around that is probably the scariest thing. And because there's a million different ways you can go, and I have tried a bunch of different things, gone into university courses, gone out of university courses, started to be a pilot at one point, stopped studying to be a pilot at one point, but I've really found a degree now that I'm really happy in, and it's really provided some structure and provided direction that I've really loved, and it's exciting about what my future holds. And I guess this person that I want to nominate has provided me just a range of a range of views on the world, and given me a range of perspective to I guess base my judgment and decision making off, and I can't stress how important that has been. They've allowed me to really just discover who I am through hearing different perspectives and hearing different points of view, which is really crucial, I think, for a young person leaving school and not knowing where to go. But they've just been consistent too, and that's the best part. They've been in my life and they've been consistent over these last 4 years, and I can't actually thank them enough for that, because they've never let me down. They've provided help when I'm there. They've provided the voice of reason when I'm there. They've provided me a different point of view to help me challenge my thoughts, but for the better, and really probably constructed person I am today. And the person I do want to nominate, or the figure I do want to nominate, is actually you guys, the Dyl Friends podcast, and Producey, and the whole team. I mean, yeah, it's a
little
you guys
fucker.
Actually, provided me with. I've been literally listening to every single episode up to date, and it's provided me with a structure and routine that I've needed, that I didn't even know existed. I started listening on a whim one day after close to leaving school about 4 years ago, and I haven't missed an episode since. And I actually can't thank you guys enough, because you don't actually know the effect and profound impact that you've had on my life, your whole team. And sometimes I guess it's nice for you guys to hear that, but and you might get it every now and again, but it really is true. So I guess a bit of reverse engineering, but I actually want to nominate you guys for the full credit to the boys Dove hotline, and keep doing what you're doing. I absolutely love it, and just know you're making a really big impact out there. So yeah, thanks boys, I appreciate it.
There you go.
Unbelievable, man.
Special.
That was really cool. I didn't know where he was going with that, but
A nice little twist.
that was a really good twist, and good on you, Darcy, for holding that. That was very strategic.
Took some strength. Took some strength.
Far out.
Nah, really beautiful message.
Really beautiful message. I don't even know what to say. That was beautiful. So I suppose everyone, like you, Mon and Darcy and Sam and Zach and Adam, I think it is it is one of those things, not this isn't about us, but just replying to the message is one of those things sometimes. I think for all the people, right, that have been nominated, okay, let's maybe frame it this way. All the people that have been nominated, you do these things, I suppose, you're not doing it to like get nominated for anything, but it is so nice to be told. And I think that's like when we started this thing, to give full credit to the boys or tell someone what they've been doing for you. I don't know, you feel like sometimes you make an impact, and I think everyone in that journey that's like helped someone throughout this whole series has felt like they're doing it, but then to actually be rewarded and tell them is like another thing too. So hope that makes sense. It just feels fucking really nice to do that, because I think we know we have impact, right?
Absolutely.
But you don't until you hear it like that, I don't think, sometimes.
Well, I was going to say, I thought that would be a really good one to finish on, because like we see it every day, like you question a lot, like what you're doing with the podcast and where the show's going, but you probably don't understand the impact you actually have on this community that you've built, not only like through this Dove campaign in the last 9 weeks, but over the last 4 or 5 years since you've been doing this show. Like it is truly pretty powerful, so you should be really proud.
Mate, you guys should be proud. We're all proud. I think it's unbelievable. This it's crazy, because no, you're right. Like this whole year, I suppose I personally have been even just like questioning everything. I suppose it just happens when you do things for a long time. You just go, where the fuck are we going with this? Are we losing the audience? Are we like still resonating? Do we, we want to always innovate, be true to what we're doing. So, to hear that and to hear that message, it's great, and no, we'll be good. The one thing I loved that he said actually in that, before I even realised what he was saying, was like consistency. And I was like, that's something that, for us, we're always just trying to be consistent, like just show up and just get it done. So, Max, that means a lot. Mate, we won't be taking the $5 grand. I'll fix you guys up.
I was like, speak for yourself.
Let's talk about that off.
But you deserve that, brother. So you can have the $5. Maybe just take us out for a beer if you're in Melbourne, and we'll go from there. But absolutely huge, and can't thank you enough, Max, for that. Great name, by the way.
One thing I do want to say is there were so many people that entered this competition. Honestly, the hundreds of people that we heard the messages, and they were unbelievable. Unfortunately, there could only be the 7 winners.
Yes.
But I would encourage everyone to actually reach out to those people they gave full credit to, and like let them know, because like you just heard that message and it has such a positive impact on you. So they're not easy conversations to have sometimes, but I think we should be trying to do it more.
Nah, Das, that's a great point. It's a great point. I actually, I wanted to do this as well myself, a lot better, because you think about it and you're like, I'll do it tomorrow, but it's just like, just do it, man.
Eat the frog.
It's the bloody power of being acknowledged, hey?
Yeah.
Love it.
I know, we say you don't do things to be acknowledged, but fuck, it is kind of nice sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone likes it. Everyone likes feeling that way.
Yeah, you do. But hey, this would not be possible without Dove Men+Care. So full credit to the team at Dove Men+Care for showing care response to this podcast and genuinely changing some people's lives. Good on you, team.
Woo.
Hey, today's episode. Lethal Leigh.
Lethal
Leigh Joey Montagna.
Oh.
I was going to say, is Lethal Leigh...
That's Leigh...
Matthews?
That's the other Leigh Matthews.
Yeah.
I just used them together. But
Joey's lethal as well.
Joey is lethal. Joey's a star. I think he is genuinely one of the best minds in footy at the moment, and he's doing an awesome job at what he's done, transition out of his career, and just always wanted to get him in the podcast. One, because we had him on Footy and Friends, and he can just talk so well, and two, just to hear a bit more about his journey at Saint Kilda, transitioning into the media, why he does what he does, the behind the scenes, I suppose, of an analyst. And we actually spoke about the differences of like, a commentator versus an analyst versus an opinion type media, and like how to not get confused about those three things, which was really cool. Spoke about where, things are heading in the footy this year, and obviously heading into a really big campaign at the moment for finals. We give a few of his expert analysis tips for that too. So plenty there. Really exciting and massive episode. So let's get into it. Joey, how are you, mate?
Yes, good. Thanks, Dyl.
Thanks for coming back in, mate. We caught up a couple of weeks ago, and we touched on about 10% of our chat.
Yeah.
And I still had about 59 questions.
Well,
left
too much
over.
footy happening. Too much footy going
mate.
on. It went nuts. How'd your review go this morning, trying to wrap up the weekend?
It's been it has seriously been, and we say it every week, but there's no, storyline short of anything. You were saying it before. You can go either way from the weekend. A team wins. It's like, we throw the bath out, the candy out with the bath, or whatever that fucking saying is. And if it's the other way around,
candy out with the bath.
This is why I'd never make it on Fox and Triple N, mate. We don't do the slogans that well.
Yeah.
But vice versa, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, no, I don't. And we'll get into about being a so-called footy media expert, but I've got no idea. But that's the beauty of it. I mean, we just, it's always great to chat about, and people love it, and it's interesting. But to try and actually predict it's impossible. Clubs wouldn't know. Media don't know. It is one of the strangest years, and I reckon there's still another twist somewhere. So
if you had to put it on it now, I know it's a hard time of the year, and we're only 2 seconds in, but where would you go for the rest of the season?
Well, I like to use sort of analytics and a bit of data. So the odds are now stacked in the teams that are in the top 4. Yeah. So there's this sort of storyline, because it's so even, everyone thinks that anyone can win it. I'm probably leaning to the view that because it is so even, you need all the advantages you can get, even the slightest advantage. So the home ground, if you're playing a team, the home ground makes a massive advantage. Or the team that's got the double chance, so they can let one slip and still win it. Or, less travel. I think an injury, of course, and players available are all going to be massive factors. When it is so even, it's the little things that matter. So for me, I'm now leaning towards the top 4. And the teams that probably no one has spoken about are being Port Adelaide and the Giants. It's almost like, especially with Port, the perception of previous years, they're good, but they're not that good. Part of my job too, what I like to do with the footy analysis, is I like to always challenge the misconceptions or the myths and go, yeah, I know that's the perception out there, but here's the reality. And the reality is right now, Port Adelaide are playing as good as any team in the competition. So why not Port? Giants have won 7 straight. Why not the Giants? So I lean towards probably those 2 teams at the moment as the ones that definitely one will be in the grand final. It's just a matter of who they play.
And you can say this from an expert point of view. We'll get into all that stuff later. But even from a playing point of view, you've been there in September. When the thing with the Swans at the moment is, yes, they've been good all year, and I still think they can go long way in, but they're not in good form yet.
Yeah.
When do you have to flick it? Like, when do you think teams can actually start going, or is it too late? Like, what's this time of the year, last game of the season's just past us by the time this episode comes out.
Yeah.
How can they, unless they really sort of flick it this weekend, are they leaving it a bit too short?
I reckon they've done not a bad job of starting to turn it. So they might have had their lull. The win against Essendon, second half, turned it. The Collingwood win took to the last quarter. So that's now 2 on the trot. They win their final home and away game. That's 3 in a row. And I think that's enough, because you can't just flick a switch when you lose form. You've sort of got to build it. And Sydney might have gone through their lull and built it. So I agree with you. Absolutely, Sydney are good enough. The one thing with successful teams, and you probably know as well when you've been in them, it's not necessarily the stats and the game plan, it's the connection. It's a connection piece that you just feel with a group, where you look to your mate on the left, look to your mate on the right. I trust him. Yeah, we feel good. Sydney have got that. So even when they were struggling. So the Swans are certainly a team that I think trust each other, which goes a long way in finals, when you just know your mates are all going to step up and do what they need to do.
We'll bounce around a bit today, because there is so much to touch on. But let's flock to your time at the Saints, because you're talking about that 09-10 period, even 11, sort of when you guys were just, I think it was 17 wins in a row, was it?
19 wins in a row in 2009.
It was just...
And we didn't win the flag. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I know, but that just shows how tough it is to actually win one.
Yeah.
What was that sort of look of confidence feel like? What does that actually feel like in a footy club? Where does it come from? Is it player driven? Is it coach driven, or something that I've really come to talk about a lot? And people are probably sick to death of me talking about it. But what was the governance like at the Saint Kilda Footy Club at that time, in terms of board stability and like GMs and those sort of people? Do you reckon they played a big role in it, or do you think that's more the modern game now, that it has to be a good business?
Yeah, I've probably always had the philosophy that I've always sort of separated the on-field team from whatever else is happening. Like, there's always a chat when there's distractions at a footy club, board issues or off-field issues. I've always had the view that if you have a strong team and a strong, the coach and the footy team, you can always put that to the side, as long as you go about your business at training and playing. And St Kilda have always probably had sort of off-field distractions and issues going on. But through that period, Ross Lyon's greatest strength was bunker down, and it was about us as a team. It was the old, forget about the media, forget about the narratives, we're a group and we'll just worry about ourselves. So we sort of had the Saints bubble, we called it, and it was all just about us. And that worked for us for a while, and people might say it was, it made it hard to crack in if you were the media trying to get interviews or really find out what was going on behind the 4 walls. But we had this tight-knit group, and you connect through, I think, shared experience. So when you're a group that come through together and you come through some, some periods of success and losses and shared experiences on and off the field, you get connected as a group. So we had that as a playing group. There was a lot of us that got drafted at a similar time, came through, and we were ready to go. You combine that with the talent, and that's probably why we had and a great coach, Ross Lyon is one of the best coaches going around. You combine those three things, and that's why we won a lot of home and away games for that 3 or 4 year period.
Hey, take us into that now. I know it's hard to reflect on those times, I guess, and they might be at the top of your mind, but that period, you look at teammates and yourself. How many All-Australians did you? Two All-Australians. 09-10.
Yeah.
Rewalt, Lenny Hayes. I'm missing about
Goddard,
the other.
Yeah,
there was
Fisher,
some seriously impressive players. Running it out each week with those guys, like what was that feeling like, knowing what you're going to get from them? Was it knowing that? Like, were you extremely confident just going it? Yeah,
absolutely. That's what I said before. When you just looked at going out, the best time for me was that 5 minutes before you ran out on the ground, because you have that. You look at your teammates and you just had that trust, and that team through that period, nearly every single player, I could say, to a T, you looked at and you just knew what they were going to give. You could trust them. So that made it pretty special. But also when you've got guys like that, it challenges you to then raise your game and make sure that you're trustworthy and you're reliable, and how far can you take your game. So you almost push each other in the end when you've got a group of players that are at that sort of level, and we had that with that team.
With Ross coming in, so when did he come in?
Started in 2007. So we played in prelims in 04, 05 under Grant Thomas, made finals in 06, but that was a transition phase. That was when we still had Gehrig and Stevie Powell and Harvey and Thompson and Peckett and Aussie Jones. And we had this sort of the older guys, and then they were sort of tapering off through that period, 06, 07. And that was when the sort of us group as a younger group became sort of the main sort of core of the group. And Ross Lyon, it wasn't easy in 07. He sort of came in with a completely different sort of game style and identity to how he wanted to play, to what we were used to. It took us a while to get used to that. But then when it clicked, we sort of were away.
Go back to that Grant Thomas. I'd love to talk about sort of the changing of the guard of those periods. Young crop, as you said, coming through, which really were the heartbeat of that 09-10 period in the end. But when you guys are coming through under Grant, what was that time like at the Saints Footy Club? Like, I can just remember that was Gehrig, big names.
Hamill
Harvey,
got to the club. Yeah. It was a great time.
And obviously as well, one of our favourite icons in Australia, Shane Warne. I feel like that just is so iconic with that time of the Footy Club.
It was. And they were great days. Grant Thomas was more like a father figure. He sort of got the role. It was a bit strange. He was on the board and took the role. And he was more all about the mental aspect of footy. He was the one that really instilled in us the whole thing about mental toughness and the why to everything. Did you chase as hard as you could? No. Well, why? So we had one, and it always stuck out. Everything came back to the why, and it all came back to how important it was. How important something meant to you meant how much effort you put in. So I remember one day there was a vision and someone chased. It was Brett Voss, Michael Voss's brother, great player actually, and he was chasing and Grant Thomas paused and goes, "Are you chasing as hard as you could there?" And Brett Voss goes, "Yep." He goes, "Are you sure?" And Brett Voss goes, "I ran as hard as I could." So then Grant Thomas spinning goes, "So instead of the bloke you were chasing, instead of having the football, you got a little 2-year-old girl, don't you?" He goes, "Yep." He goes, "If he had your daughter in your hand and he was running away with it, he's stealing your daughter, would you run harder than that?" And he goes, "Yeah, of course I would." He goes, "Well, why?" Because it was more important to chase the bloke that was stealing your daughter as it was just to chase a bloke that just had a footy. So it just came back to the old level of importance you placed on a contest or the game or your football career, put in the effort you put in required to it. And that's that was sort of what he instilled in us really early.
2 questions about Grant, because one of my good mates, Newsy, who obviously a mutual friend of ours, he's now married to Jordan, which is Grant's daughter.
Yeah, so I better be careful.
Better be careful.
Yeah,
I don't see Grant a lot, but I know he's a
intimidating figure.
He's an intimidating figure.
Presence.
Even I feel like now the only people that ever gave me a bit of I felt. Those just coach, those old school. You just quiver. You're just mate, I'm 31. You weren't even my coach. I don't know why you're making me feel nervous. Yeah. But do you think he still seems like extremely vocal about football and his knowledge? Do you think that he could have still stayed in footy? I know he's an extremely business orientated man. He's done very well outside of it. Was he lost to the game in that sense?
Oh, it's a good question. Probably, because he is so passionate about St Kilda. He is so smart. And he does love it. He probably could, but I think maybe from my recollections in some ways, that was probably I think in the end a bit of his downfall because he tried to.
He was a fan.
He was a fan, but he tried to do everything. I think he wanted to do the contracts and wanted to coach and wanted to fix the club. And I think he had the great intent and the great mindset. And he did a great job, as I said, for the foundations of what we were. So in some ways, you think, and I think he maybe has been asked to come back on a number of occasions, whether it is at board level, and for some reason he's chosen to stay away. But he's certainly been a big presence of the football club through this sort of the modern time since that sort of early 2000s.
One thing that stands out, I don't know why, it just like sticks in the back of my head of that time with Grant Thomas. I think you must have had a big loss or maybe a big win. I don't know what it was, but he took you all to the movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember there was just like this guy.
When the war began, it was one of those movies. It was a shocking movie. Yeah.
But I just remember like...
Made news.
It was on the news. And there's like all you guys just walking into like a Hoyt's like cinema. And I was like, this is the fucking weirdest thing I've ever seen.
But again, he was a lateral thinker, which I love.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Sam Mitchell now and what he's doing at Hawthorn. Like Grant was the first to take us on the overseas training camps.
Yeah.
So for a young guy to go to London and train with Olympic athletes was amazing. And then we went to South Africa and to get to see, you know, how the kids lived in South Africa, but spent 15 days, 16 days together as a group in South Africa. High altitude, it was hard training, but we loved it. And in those days, you could still have that the right night, go and have a beer. And then the third year we went to China. That wasn't a great trip. That was a bit different, the Chinese training camp. But we stayed at like the AIS of China. So that experience was an eye-opener.
What was that like?
Like we went into there were like 6-year-old kids like just playing table tennis like for 8 hours a day, and the girl gymnast, I remember it, they were in tears because the coaches were like making them do handstands on the wall or like were making them do the splits, and that was like they were punishing them, and they were like 7-8-year-old girls at this like AIS training camp. But all those experiences were part of when I talked about having the connection as a group, because you went away together, but it was a training camp. It was hard, but you got the life experiences, and they were all the things that Grant implemented that I think he was ahead of his time.
Is there anything, you know, when you're in it and you're just like, you can't question, you just buy into everything when you're in footy, that it's so like, it's almost culty in a way that you just go by whatever's said and you don't do it. You, like, you know, on an extreme level, you think of what happened with Essendon and the saga. Like, if that happened to me,
you can understand how that happened.
I would have done it straight away. And I've always said this. You just do it.
Yep.
But then I suppose there's a few things sometimes you look back on, you go, fucking, that was a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Does anything stand out to you in your career where you just look back and go, fuck, that was strange?
It's a good question,
because you just get so...
You do. You think that you do. It's a cult. You're right. There is a bit of...
You know, and just doing it another extreme level while you think about this, like I always think about it with like COVID. And like, I always go, if you told me to stay inside for 2 years, no fucking way I'd do it. But we fucking did it.
We did.
So you literally do what people tell you to do.
You get brainwashed a bit,
don't
we?
You do.
Remember we used to like, you'd go to your neighbour's house and I remember sneaking to check if there was anyone out to cross the road, because I went and visited my neighbour during COVID, and you think, I'm going to get in trouble.
That's what footy clubs are like.
Yeah, they are.
That's what they're like.
They are. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe think about if anything's there, but I don't know. For some reason, I just remember sitting back in some meetings just thinking, this is concerningly weird. I'm not sure what we're doing right now.
The best one that we had, I do have one. It wasn't under Grant Thomas, but it was Scott Waters. Again, he came in, and that didn't quite work out.
I feel like that was a weird period.
He had all these lateral ideas as well. He decided, instead of after the game singing the theme song, he said, I think he took it from like the army or something, they all have like a chant or a war cry that they would sing before they went and competed.
Oh, God.
So he made the leadership group, actually there's a couple of good ones. So he made the leadership group come up with like, go and write like a war cry or a chant and sing it before the games. So really, because he was the captain, had to like lead the charge.
He's been stitched up in a few of these
So I
situations.
can't really remember. It was sort of that like, so in the rooms before we ran out for a few weeks, we tried the sort of hoo-ah, like one of these, and it was sort of, you know, you try to make it work because you want to do the right thing. You try. And then you finish it and you sort of look at each other and go, hey, that was a real wank, wasn't it? So we did that for about 2 or 3 weeks, and it was just, it fell flat. That was certainly one that I remember.
Rui's been stitched. He's been stitched up with a couple of these things.
You saw that one we tried to win the free air flights where he did that.
Was that when
on the Saints go my?
I've always wanted to know, and I forgot to ask him about it. Like, what happened there?
Well, again, that was a competition to win. It was like 80 free flights for, I think it was Virgin that put it on, and St Kilda obviously had always struggled for money, and it was an opportunity to, you know, pay for, I don't know, overseas training camp or maybe flights of the year. So this was more the media or marketing team wanted to go along and had this great idea. But this was one where, as senior players, we all read it and said, no way, I'm not getting involved in this. So none of us did. So then it got to the end where they needed like 10 players to go and sing. And if you watch the background, you would hardly even know any of the names.
They were all Sandy Zebs. Sandringham Zebras
boys that just did what they were told.
Yeah.
But they needed a leader. They needed someone. And it was the old Rui, you're the captain. You just have to do it. So he's tried to do the right thing. Tried to help the club, do the right thing, and now he's an internet meme that he just can't get away from forever. The poor fella. But, these are the things you do at footy clubs.
You just get it done, you do. Touching on your teammates, we spoke about it before, but we've had on the pod Stephen Baker, Lenny Hayes, Nick Rewalt, Stephen Milne. Part of our Dove Men+Care series is we like to give full credit to people in our lives, teammates, family, whoever has had big impacts on it. But I thought today, talking about your footy career and what a successful period that was for you guys, who's someone you'd like to give full credit to that maybe doesn't get the accolades they deserve? Like, there's so many guys
for our team,
and
our
team,
success.
even over that period. Like, there's so many role players that I could think of, like McWalter and Farron Ray.
Jason Blake was a big contributor.
If you have to pick one.
You know what? One that probably, in the end, because he left, but Luke Ball had a big impact on the football club to get to the point where we did, because it's strange as an 18-year-old, everyone's different in their level of professionalism and what it took. And because Bally came in with all of us, and he was like at 18, was like a pro, it was trained hard, was ready to go. There's that competitiveness when you all get drafted together. You all want to be, you want to compete with each other. So you all challenge each other. But Luke Ball almost was the sort of the head of that. When there was the guys that all got drafted together with Del Santo, Matt Maguire, myself, Xavier Clark, Sam Fisher came the year later. We all sort of had this inner competitiveness against each other to drive the standards. But it was Luke Ball that sort of led that. So he was one, I think, and he was captain of the club when he was 21. He was All-Australian and best and fairest. So he was probably one that I reckon lifted the professionalism from a younger perspective that really probably doesn't get spoken about a lot. Everyone goes to Lenny and Rui, and they were the front and centre. But Luke Ball was probably not far behind them, but probably went about it a bit more of a quieter way. Very intelligent too. He headed up the AFL Players Association, very popular. So he's one that I reckon, particularly for me, that one of my best mates at the time that I learnt a lot off and challenged myself with, and then in the end, he played in the grand finals but moved to Collingwood.
How, things happen in footy, and you've been around long enough to know that people move teams. Things can change in an instant. What was that feeling like as a friendship level when he did go to the Pies and ultimately end up playing your old team? It's just...
I'm always pretty pragmatic. I understood the situation because in 2009 he was challenged by Ross Lyon because he's running. He lost a bit of power and he's running with his groins. And for a guy that had been the #1 draft pick, he'd been the golden child, the golden boy all the way through. He'd never really been challenged as a footballer. He'd never needed to be because he was the ultimate pro. So then in 2009 he was challenged, and I think he was even sent to the VFL at one stage. And then grand final day he was left on the bench for a long period of time. And probably when you look back now, it's probably a mistake because grand final, he was playing pretty well and he's just built for grand finals. And I think for him, it felt like, well, I'm not really rated around here, and he then decided that, maybe it's an opportunity to go to another club, fresh start, and a club that really want me. And I understand that. I sort of get that. I think that's fair. So, he let us know, and that's how it all panned out.
What was Ross like in those situations with like senior leadership group like yourself and Rui, Lenny, all those sort of main dogs at the time to communicate where the club went? Like, was he quite like, was it a conversation of like, boys, where do you want to head with these sort of decisions, or did he ever approach you guys on like what to do? Like, what was he like as a, I suppose, out of game day coach?
Yeah, we all have a huge amount of respect,
and I joke about it with Mick,
and all love Ross. Yeah.
Everyone, you often, the only bloke I've ever not liked him is Tommy Sheridan because he never got a game. But besides that, everyone else, talks very positive.
Yeah, and Ross was exactly the same because he could separate you as a person from you, the footballer, which was always great. So he could give us a spray and, hit us between the eyes in meetings. But then straight after that, he'd ask, how's the family, or chat to you, or make a joke. And it was always separate. So he was great like that. He was a terrific leader in that he had the good balance between, this is what I want to do, and this is what we're going to stand for, but including the leaders in it and taking everyone on the journey with him. I think he would say, and the group would say, probably the ones that weren't in the main sort of 25, 26 probably felt that they weren't as connected. But I think that's pretty common with footy clubs, that if you're not in a group and the main parts of it, you maybe feel a bit left out. But I really rate Ross and have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, and from speaking from someone who was never really consistently in that 25, 26, like, you can't make everyone feel welcome. It's actually not possible.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of shits me these days a little bit with this notion of a relationship coach. And it's like, the one thing, players, it's great to have a relationship. You can receive feedback better and whatnot. But the first and foremost thing you want from a coach is just honesty. Like, we don't need to be mates. Like, I don't necessarily want to hang out with you on the weekends. I'm sure you've got more people to hang out with too. Yep. So when I hear this thing about relationship coach, and we'll get to media, we'll talk about it now. It's something that just fucking, it just makes me, I'm like, spew. Like, that's not a thing. They don't want to, like, relationship, yes. Respect. It's more about just being honest.
Respect and honesty. And that was Ross.
I don't give a shit about being mates.
Yeah, Ross wasn't like our great mate as a coach, but it was respect. Like he knew that if you did the right thing by me and you worked hard, I will respect you. And you respected Ross in the exact same way, where he would give you the honest feedback, and you knew that it wasn't personal. He could separate the two. And you're right, that's exactly what it was built off. It wasn't off the sort of chummy, pretend to be friends and let's have a cup of tea together. It was more the respect and honesty through, you work hard, I work hard. I'll just let you know where you're at. You know where I'm at. So Ross and I had a weird relationship where we hardly ever really spoke because we didn't need to. Like, I sort of was comfortable with my spot in the team and my role, and I wasn't one that needed some positive feedback. There were other guys that would have to walk past the coach's office every day and, need the pat on the back. I was sort of one that the only time Ross really spoke to me was if I was getting in trouble. So he understood that from what I needed as a player, and I knew that with Ross, that I didn't need anything from him as a coach unless I needed a rocket.
It's a great way to be. I think it's a really important message. I feel like it gets lost in the modern game about, I just hate if people think that everyone's walking around slapping each other on the out. Like, 'cause it doesn't need to be like that. Yeah. It really doesn't. A lot of guys, I don't think, need that attention too. Finishing up at the Saints, obviously after the grand finals, and then Ross went to Fremantle. Was that weird?
Yeah, that was weird. That was weird. It was really weird because I don't know if I've said this publicly. I think I was the one that broke the news to the club. So I remember sitting in my apartment in South Melbourne. I got a phone call from I think it was a phone call from my dad. And he goes, Ross Lyon's going to Fremantle. I was like, what? He goes, I'm at the pub. He was at the Rhubarb in Ivanhoe. He was at the Rhubarb. And he was with a mate who was mates with Mark Harvey. So Mark Harvey had just let his mate know, I think Ross Lyon has just taken my job at Fremantle. He was standing next to my dad. My dad rang me. So I've got straight away on the phone to the board, whatever you call the football director at St Kilda, which was Andrew Thompson at the time, and I said, "That's great. Has Ross Lyon gone to Fremantle?" And he was like in a hut, like, "What? Let me call you back." And then he's hung up, and then all sort of shit's hit the fan, and then it was like broken that night or whatever that Ross Lyon had taken the Fremantle job. So that was bizarre. It was really weird. It was deflating because as we said, we had a great connection as a group. Didn't see it coming. But then again, it's like anything. When Ross explained it to the senior players, the situation, and a bit like the Luke Ball situation, he just felt he wasn't respected, he wasn't wanted, he wasn't valued as the way that he should be. Well, he's had to do what was best for him, and Fremantle was someone that was desperate to have him and rated him really highly and respected him and wanted him. So he made the move, and that was it.
Mate, that is honestly how that many stories these days, a modern version of the WhatsApp group, how they got broken. Like your old man's at Rhubarb with Mark Harvey's mate.
Yeah, and the bloke goes, I think Mark.
And then you broke it to the board.
And I'm ringing the board. I rang to say, is this true? No, I was ringing up to say, is this true? Is this what's happened? And they were like, not sure. Hang on.
Just check
and then I hung up thinking, hang on a minute. Do they not know yet? And I was like, yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It's weird.
Your own finish up, your own career at the Saints. How did that all pan out with you personally? I know that it was a time where Scotty Waters had taken over.
Yep.
So different clubs for a different time, passing of the baton to something else. They probably weren't going as well as you were. How was the finish for yourself?
Yeah, it was a real tough time under Scott Waters. It just didn't click. We moved to Seaford. We were going through. They decided that we needed a rebuild, so they moved on Ben McAvoy, Brendan Goddard, Nick Dalsano, some of my great mates. So I actually started looking around. I met with Essendon in North Melbourne because it was when free agency had just started. So it was sort of like, is there an opportunity here to maybe go to another club, have a fresh start? I can sense what's happening at St Kilda. We're no longer going to be having success, and my mates are all leaving, and I wasn't really enjoying the club at that time. Spoke to the club and said, look, I think maybe I want to go. They basically said, no, we're not letting you. They said, we're going to trade Nick Dalsano. We're not trading both of you. We can't afford to lose too many. So you're going to stay. So that was sort of the end of it. Not my heart was in it. I didn't really want to leave, but it was just a time where it wasn't ideal. And then Alan Richardson came in after a couple of years of Scott Waters. And Richo was a great guy. I really liked Alan Richardson, but a tough time with our list where we're at. We just didn't have enough talent and played 5 years of losing footy. At times they used to call Rui and I like the grumpy old men because we were the two leaders that were still there that sort of knew what was expected and the standards of the group, and we were trying to demand that, but a younger group didn't quite get it, and it was a tough time. And then, like most players, Dyl, as you know, like 95% of players, you don't retire on your own terms. You sort of get told it's coming to an end. I was still playing good footy in 2017, and then I got injured like at round 16, round 17 of that year, and I was still playing good footy, even that game against Sydney Swans. So I think I still had 18 touches at half time. I think I was still one of our better players, but got injured that day. And then at the end of the year, waiting for a contract, seeing where it was at, you start getting a bit nervous. And then you get a phone call from the coach at the end of the season saying, I'm just in Albert Park. I might just drop in and say g'day. And I'm thinking, Alan Richardson lives in Park Orchards. He's not just driving through Albert Park for no reason. So he popped over and he let me know that, they were going to go in a different direction and go with the youngsters. And my time was up at the end of 2017.
Those chats, and again, they're challenging ones. I've actually been in 2 of them myself. And I actually really appreciate them. They're good to have face-to-face. I think a lot of guys, sometimes you can see... My most hated thing is when people just call their own retirement. And I'm like, no, go and cop it eye to eye and let them tell you what the news is. How did your conversation go? Was it something that you accepted, or did you question any of it? Or was it something I didn't agree with it. I still thought I had enough footy to play another year. But again, as the sort of theme, I'm pretty pragmatic. Like, I understood the situation. We're in a rebuild. We've got a lot of youngsters that we want to play. I was playing at half-back sort of that stage. It was 32, 33, but just felt like he said that we need to get more games into the youngsters. And he felt the group was ready to move past Rui and I and sort of have the next wave of leaders, sort of the Seb Ross and Jack Steele and Jack Stephen and these guys to take over the club. So I got it. I understood it. I thought I could have played on, but so do most players. But that was the end of it. And then in some ways, in hindsight, it was probably the best thing because the next year, St Kilda won the wooden spoon. They won it was a horrible year. And I just thought to myself, if I was playing in that team as the veteran, I probably would have been the first to get dropped, or it just would have been horrible. And in some ways, it was nice that 12 months later, I saw Alan Richardson and he came up and basically apologised and said, you know what, we realised we probably needed you. We missed your leadership. We underestimated your impact of leaving the football club, what that would do from a sort of a team sense. So he sort of apologised and thought that in hindsight we did it. And that made me feel good. I was like, yeah, well, that's all right. Yeah,
all good.
Oath.
Yeah.
Richo, I'm sure you have a lot of respect for him now.
Yeah.
Alan Richard is at Melbourne.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd have to say, like, out of all the coaches I've had, that relationship I was referring to before, not of like we're best mates, we're going to hang out and have a beer on the way. There's probably 50 years or 40 years between us. But in terms of like respect and knowing where you stand with someone, he would have to be hands down.
Yeah, I got on really well with Richo. Yeah, he was good like that, especially for me as a leader. He leaned on me a lot, and I was sort of supporting him a lot as well. As I said, it was always a tough period. We weren't playing finals, but a lot of respect for Richo. Yeah,
I had him at the Blues for a year with Rats.
Yeah.
Moving on to the media, I know you were doing some work transitioning. One thing I always loved and respected about you is that you didn't wait for things on a platter. You were really proactive with your transition of your career. One, because, I don't know, actually. One, I was thinking was because you're actually passionate about something, you wanted to get into it, versus the actual stress of going, fuck, I've got to find something next. Was there a bit of both? Was it like...
Yeah, there was. The best bit of advice I ever got, because as you know, when you're a footballer, everyone's always saying, drumming in your ear, what are you going to do post-footy? What does it look like post-footy? And, the uni and doing all these other things. And Eddie McGuire who was at Triple M, who said to me, he goes, your master's degree is your 280 games of AFL. Yeah. That's your master's. You've done your uni or your apprenticeship. So if you love footy and you want to stay in the industry, you've got your master's degree. Why would you try and venture out and go do something else and start down the bottom and work your way out, unless you were passionate about it? And it was great advice, because you do feel like, I should do something else outside of footy. And then I realised, but I love footy. I'm good at it. I know my football. And I've got my master's degree. I've done all the 15 years of playing and the apprenticeship. So that was when I thought, you know what, I'll make a fist of it and try and do something staying in footy. Coaching was always an option, but it was always sort of like a secondary option for me if the media didn't work out. I thought I'll have a crack at the media first. If it doesn't pan out, I can always be an assistant coach.
Why coaching over? Why media over coaching? Because that's a really it's a big.
I probably felt what I love about the footy stuff once I couldn't play more was more the high sort of analysis and tactics and the game plan and strategy, that sort of stuff. Not so much assistant coach. There's a bit of monotonous roll the balls in the basketball court every day at 7 a.m. and that sort of stuff didn't arouse me. I was like, that's not really going to do it for me.
This player doesn't even want to be here. We're both doing this so that he's ticking the boxes.
Throwing the ball against the net, for 35 minutes wasn't really going to do it. So I thought I'll venture down the media path and see where that heads.
The analytics, and I've said this to you, off air, but I think you're genuinely one of the best, if not the best, analytical minds in the media at the moment. I love listening to First Crack, you and Kingy. I love what you guys have to say. Now, question without giving you notice on this one, but in terms of the analytical stuff that you guys go and talk about, because it's for me, and not saying that I know a lot about media, but I have been there and seen, sat in meetings and tried to understand what people are talking about. How much do you feel like, let me rephrase this question. The reason I'm saying this is because when I watch First Crack and I listen to you and Kingy talk, I'm like, this is as close, if not more, analysis than you'd get in an AFL club. So when you watch the media and you listen to other things, do you sometimes think that, like, in your own head, fuck, this shit would not even fly at a footy club? Like, is it even there?
Yeah, I do. And I do know that clubs do get a bit frustrated because if someone just wants to throw out a bit of a myth or a perception or their own version of what they think a team's doing and it's wrong, it gets out in the media and fans then believe it. So I've spoken to clubs and say, do you get frustrated? And they're like, yes, but they've almost got to they've stopped trying to fight it, and they're like, we can't do anything about it. If someone in the media wants to say that, Ross Lyon's game plan is boring, and everyone just goes with it and they go, yeah, it's not much they can do with it. Like it's one example of just the myths and the sort of the perceptions, and I sort of understand that there's a lot that do it because for me. And putting the work in, you've got to be full-time media. Like I basically, Monday's my day off, but I'll be on the computer, this afternoon on a Monday and start looking at the weekends, some numbers and some vision and start to sort of think about the week and Tuesday, Wednesday. It's full-time. And I don't know how many guys in the media have that opportunity to sit at home for 2 or 3 days early in the week to really grasp it all. I know Kingy does, but a lot of other guys have secondary jobs or do a lot of other things and probably find it hard. So it's not as easy for them to be across everything. So maybe there's, as Ross Lyon would say, my old coach, there's a bit more fingernail deep analysis rather than the really drilling into the why. And I always like the why, Yeah. So when I have an opinion, I prefer to have it backed up with some evidence, either some vision or some stats to back up my opinion to say, well, I'm not just throwing this out there. I've actually got a reason why I think this. And that's just my philosophy that I try and go with, but I make sure that I put the work in.
No, you do. I suppose there's, in fairness as well, there's categories that I think that we need to, when consuming content, and not just footy, but in anything, we need to be more clear on. There's opinions.
Yeah.
There's analysis.
Yeah.
There's, comedic, hopefully, the stuff that we do, podcasting, like it's just taking the piss, but having a bit of a chat about footy and opinions. But then there's, news breaking as well. So it's almost like really actually understanding what content you like and where to get that from is the way to do it.
Spot on. Yeah. And that's the whole, it's listeners and viewers' choice. Who do you prefer? Some people love Kane Corn, some can't stand him. Some love what Kingy and I do. Others can't stand the stats and the numbers. And so that's part of what it is. And that again is, you're right, it's just finding your niche, what separates, me from what other people do who do some, really great stuff. I just try and do it differently, do it my way. Some like it, some don't. And that's the approach we take.
I would have no idea on this question at the moment, but over the years, there's been the Weagles web, there's been the come forward defence, there's been the handball chain game, Mick Moldhouse's long down the line game plan. Yeah. What is the game plan of 2024? Because I can't pick what the trend is at the moment. Is anything leading?
It's a good question. There's a lot of nuance, and this is probably, again, it gets a bit deeper, but there's a lot of nuance now about how teams set the field, how you shape the where position.
So in offense or defense?
Both, offense and defense, of where players are to give you the best chance. And it really came about off the back of Richmond's success, about this, there was a corridor bias that, Collingwood then used. And now it's evolved, and I was actually just watching some stuff on Hawthorn going, why are Hawthorn playing the way they are? And I think there is a lot of nuance in how you set the field, the role of the wingers and the half forwards and the half backs and, creating pockets of space to work into. And there is a lot of nuance that, again, you don't really go into because it's probably a bit boring. It's a bit more deeper analysis, but that is significant. It's not random. Sometimes it looks like it's random. The GWS Giants, it's not random the way they play. They set the field up to play that way. The Hawks are the same. Sydney Swans, the way they could kick the ball through anyone. It's not just because they got good kicks. There's a bit more detail and structure around how they set up.
This year, do you think that, like, say in the final series, is it a typically finals is always the best defense wins big games. Obviously, offense is incredibly important as well to see where it is. But is it more off like a scoring off turnover type offense or defense? Like, what do you think wins that at the end of the year this year?
Yeah, it's always being able to play that turnover game when he's in a bit of chaos, that you're set behind the ball and you can score off it. The numbers just stack up. Again, history, you go by history. 17 of the last 18 premiers are a top 3 team in that turnover game, and every premier for the last 18 years has been top 6 defensively. So, if you're Essendon or even like Carlton, the numbers just say if Carlton are ranked, whatever it is, 14th or 15th for points against. No team's ever won a premiership having that of a leaky defence. So they're going to have to defy history. So at the end of the day, you look back and we'll say the team that won it, they probably ranked top 6 defensively. They had a really strong turnover game, and that's where it'll end up.
It's really interesting. Are you a Moneyball man?
I am. Love Moneyball.
Do you do a bit of work with Fremantle as well, with list management stuff? Do you look at that sort of stuff for bringing players into clubs too?
Yeah, I love that. I love that as well. I really enjoy, again, just challenging the perceptions and the realities of some players. So everyone thinks this guy is a good player, but have you dived a bit deeper? The numbers aren't as sexy as they look, or vice versa. This guy doesn't have big numbers, but he's got something. He's a winner, or he doesn't. He's a high impact player from low possession. That sort of thing as well. I really enjoy, and for me, it's more just staying across what's happening in the competition by working at Fremantle. I'm removed from the team over in Perth. We work from the Melbourne office, do some list management, under 18 stuff, but then I also get access to the all the stats and all the vision and all the things, like I'm an assistant coach, that I have access to, that I think help. Well, the reason why, a big part of it helps with the media. Is
there any players in the comp at the moment that stand out in that Moneyball position more than most? That players might not, the public might not respect as much as they actually. Like you look at Sydney, for example, I don't know this guy's stats, but you look at what's happened with Melbourne taking out someone like James Jordan, playing a role for the Swans now. Doesn't set the world alight, but plays a really important role for those teams. Is there any guys like that?
Well, there are in every team. Yeah. There are in every team, and I'll be a bit more generic. There's a couple of specific names I don't want to say, but every team's got these half forward, like Brent Daniels, that now everyone's talking about. Dylan Moore, exactly right. Sam Switkowski's one at Fremantle that everyone would not even know.
He tore me up in the VFL about 6 years ago. I reckon I got him drafted.
Yeah, right.
I seriously got him drafted, that bloke.
Yeah. So the guys that play the significant roles, when I talk about setting the field up, that allow the superstars to shine, and they are important. The Alex Neil-Bullens that now gets all the credit, that was doing this 5 years ago, that no one externally spoke about, but internally they rated so highly. The Kane Lambert, when he was at Richmond winning flags. These are the guys that every team's got them, that they really value internally for what they do, but don't get the external credits because you don't see the sexy numbers and the big fancy goals. So there's heaps of those players.
100%. Talking about the list management space, and I know you're doing some work with Fremantle, not to go too closely into that, but they're targeting a lot of stuff in the off season. We're very excited for. I know you can't even say anything about it, but I'm just interested anyway with Shy and Liam Baker and those sorts of things. It could be cool to see what happens. Do you think it's going to be a big off season?
It does.
Just holistically?
Holistically, it felt like it wasn't going to, but there is now a fear that a lot of contracted players are going to request moves, and I think it feels like that we will, because we're still continuing to evolve in this space. That I don't think, I'm always frustrated. I think clubs are aggressive enough. I think too many clubs are too.
Go for it.
Yeah, go for it. Like too many clubs are too safe with trading away a good player to get something else in. Like you look at other sports, and I love the American sports, and they're happy to swap their lists over and see if they can do it better. We're in Australia, we're very conservative as a general bunch in AFL, with we'll keep our list and we'll just improve naturally and. Yeah, why don't you just really shake the tree? So, I would love to see more of it. The Christian Petrarca stuff's fascinating. There's one that could shake the tree. Tom Barras and these types of guys. So there might actually be a fair bit of movement, and I'd love to see clubs be aggressive.
I'd love to see those clubs from unless you're, say, the bottom 8 or bottom 10, whatever it is, unless you're on the improvement, you've gone to the youth, like say North Melbourne, for example, it'd still be great to get someone in. But say you are a Richmond or a Saint Kilda at the moment, where you might have to go a little bit back to go forward or grab some more players in. It'd be so cool to see them just go, you know what, fuck, let's make some really big calls. Get rid of some players, get some really good picks in, and just go again.
And that's why, again, you've got to give credit to Sam Mitchell. Yeah. He's done it differently. He's been prepared to take a risk and do it his way. And that's probably why I do the stuff at Fremantle. I think everyone is a bit too, in the industry, a lot of clubs anyway, a bit too conservative. They don't mix the magnets around, move players in different positions. That's why I love like Chris Scott as a coach. Every week Tom Stewart's now playing this role, and they do all these little moves that are really good. I love all that sort of stuff. Even moving positions. Everyone talks about it in the off season. I've got to bring in players to get better. You can improve your list significantly by just changing a player's position, which we've seen, with Fremantle moving Hayden Young into the midfield, or Rory Lobb going to centre half back. Like just one move can change the whole look of your team. And I just think sometimes coaches and clubs are a bit reluctant to be creative because there's the big risk associated if it doesn't work.
Hawthorn, you bring that up now about Sam Mitchell getting rid of, they traded on Jaeger, Tom Mitchell, Gunson left and came back.
Yeah. Well, they got rid of a lot the year before Mitchell came. They started with club, like Isaac Smith was still there, James Frawley. I think Stratton and Piopolo were still wanting to play on. Like they got rid of a lot of those guys where they probably could have kept them for 1 or 2 more years, but made the hard calls and started really going for the full rebuild.
Here's a question for you then. In terms of people that you look up to or you really respect in the AFL circles, I'd love to go 2 parts. One, holistically in the AFL, like coaches, GMs, those roles, or maybe even just the whole question is like, I love list management, GMs, coaches. Who do you think that has been like really revolutionary in the last sort of 2-3 year period that you go, fuck, they've done something different? You just referred to Sam Mitchell then, obviously, but
Luke Beveridge is one that you've got to give him respect. Whether he always gets it right, he's not, but he's prepared to get it wrong at times. But he's always been one that's tried something different, whether it's with the list or the game plan, or each week he changes and people question it, but he does it his way. You got to respect that. And the same with Chris Scott, with the way that he's gone about changing their game plan. Remember, they were playing a way that was getting them to prelims year after year. And then before 2022, he said, no, this isn't working. We're going to have the blank sheet. We're going to start again. What's the modern game look like? They changed their whole game plan, and then they went on and were the best team in 2022 by a mile. The recruits that they bring in, throwing guys in different positions. As I said, I love all that. I think that the creative coaches that have an open mind and are prepared to take risks generally get rewarded, and they cop more flack because they can get it wrong. But I like that.
The storyline of Western Bulldogs has been unbelievable this year. If they were to win the flag, it'd be the best hype video.
Yeah,
of all time
it would
to
be.
get them in.
Yeah.
In terms of that list management space, is there anyone that you look at now being at Fremantle inside that world, being like, fuck, these guys do it really well, or they're just very strategic? Or
we work with it. We've got a small group in there, but David Walls is the head of the list manager at Fremantle, and I think he's done a terrific job with just understanding the players they need. The recruiting is important, and then bringing in the right type of players.
they keep their players too.
They do, but they've had a lot leave as well, and you've got to. One thing I've learnt too is, and this is even for supporters, don't be scared if your good player leaves, because like Fremantle lost Lockie Neal, and they lost Brad Hill and Liam Henry, but then you get in Caleb Sarong's not at the club if Lockie Neal doesn't leave, and Hayden Young comes in, and you think about these other clubs like Adelaide lost Paddy Dangerfield, they played in the grand final the next year. Gary Ablett goes to Gold Coast, Geelong, the Arse didn't fall out of Geelong, they won another flag, and Buddy Franklin leaves, and so it is almost a bit of, if Christian Petrarca leaves, as much as maybe you think it's the end of the world, somehow it might still work out for Melbourne. They'll get a couple of top 10 draft picks, and I think that we worry too much about keeping some players, but if they move on, good things can still happen.
Really interesting. What about yourself, mate? What do you love about what you're doing now, and is there any things you'd like to tick off? Are you setting goals for your media career? If obviously your ball by balling, your analysis stuff, your work with list management, is there a certain, like, if you had to pick those 3, 2, 1 Brownlow votes, where's your heart lie at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I like having the variety. I like doing a bit of everything. The calling play-by-play is demanding because there's a lot of preparation that goes into it, and you've got to be on the whole time. Like, you're the lead man, and you've got to make sure that you steer the ship. So I really enjoy that. But if you did that like a couple of times every weekend, it would be like pretty draining. So I like that, having the little step back role and do a special comments game where it's a bit more just call what you see. And then I like the analysis part of it. But that's the hardest show. The first crack is by far the hardest show.
Really?
The hardest work I do, because that is, we have to find all the content and the numbers and the vision as the weekend is unfolding. So Friday night, I'll watch Friday Night Footy and then sit up after the game and go back and try and find something to talk about, or numbers. Saturday night, I'll work a couple of games, and then I sit up till 2:30 in the morning on a Saturday night catching up on the game that I didn't see and trying to find some vision and stats, and same thing early Sunday morning, prep the show, and then you're watching a game or working at a game on a Sunday, and then you're trying to scramble to get it all together for a Sunday night show. So that's by far the hardest, but it's probably the most rewarding, and it's probably it's been quite successful, I think, the opportunity. So I like having the balance is the question. Where I want to get to, I haven't really set many goals. I just want to be, good to work with, good at what I do. And the two things I do, when I do a show, all I want people to say, oh, that's interesting. I don't always have to be right or wrong. I'm never going to be right or wrong every time. But just present something where the people at home go, that's interesting. And then as a caller, I want to be the guy that really, they hear the voice and they go, oh, yeah, I know him calling. But I'm not inserting myself in the game. So I sort of just want the game to take care of itself, and I just call it and give it the respect it deserves as a game. But, yeah, grand final would be awesome to do one day. And then I do a bit of NBL over the summer, which is sort of branching. I commentate the NBL. Wow. Yeah, so this will be my third season doing the NBL. And again, that's just to branch out and try something different. And
how have you found that?
I really enjoy the NBL. It's different. It's more high energy, high octane, 2 hours, different group of guys. I really enjoy that. So that actually starts pretty soon. I've got to get my head into the basketball. But maybe one day it'd be cool to do an Olympic game. So that's sort of that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, watching the guys just
LA in 4
2028. Yeah,
Brisbane, be good. Joe, you're a star, mate. I honestly can't appreciate your time enough today. You've been incredibly generous, and you're doing incredible things. I wouldn't say that if I didn't mean it. Really, a lot of respect for what you've been able to do and transition your way, dominating one field and then back into the next. So I'm really, really pumped for you, and we'll have to get you back in very soon.
No, thanks for having me on. Appreciate
you're a star,
it,
mate. Thanks.
You.